We're negotiating from a position of pure strength, pure strength. They know that. And the Strait's already open, and we're setting records of the Strait. But we had to do that. We cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon.
That's President Trump confident in the ceasefire agreement with Iran, despite an Iranian drone strike on a cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. officials say the Singapore-flagged cargo ship called Everlovely was leaving the strait near the coast of Oman when it was hit by a drone launched by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. The strike damaged the ship's bridge. It caused no reported injuries. The International Maritime Organization says it is pausing its evacuation operation until it can confirm safety conditions in the region. The IRGC's Navy now warning that vessels will only be allowed to pass in routes that Iran has approved. The Persian Gulf Strait Authority stating, quote, any passage through routes outside the framework designated by PGSA will not be covered by safe passage guarantees and will not be entitled to insurance coverage or related liabilities. The consequences arising from passage through unauthorized routes shall be the responsibility of the owner, operator, and vessel commander. Joining me now is the Heritage Foundation Senior Research Fellow, Steve Yates. Steve, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. What are your thoughts around this? It feels like the Iranians want attention constantly. Every time we've got a ceasefire in place, they come and they either break it or they say some statement, according to their propaganda, of not wanting to do this deal.
Well, in many ways, the president is right. We have overwhelming leverage and capability right there. At the same time, we have significantly degraded capabilities out of Iran, but you can only go so far. You can't ever really get to zero. So they have the ability to annoy, frustrate, do things that have political impact. And that's kind of what this form of attack really is. It affects the psychology of markets. It affects the psychology of the insurance industry. And that's sort of the big piece outside of government that has not really fully come on board with the coalition of power to try to bring this to a manageable decline. And that's, making sure that those who own and operate these vessels can do so with their insurance coverage. That's basically how Iran has, quote-unquote, controlled the Strait. They haven't militarily controlled the Strait. They've deterred people from being willing to move their vessels. That, I think, is the last piece of this puzzle. And then I think things begin to flow more freely, and we can focus on the other long-term challenges of post-conflict U.S. and regional Iran relations.
But in terms of these comments about the insurance of ships going through the Straits, what is Iran trying to say? I mean, they're once again trying to call the shots in the Strait of Hormuz. That wasn't part of the 60-day agreement.
Absolutely not part of the agreement. And it's also one of those situations where the party that was profoundly defeated in the military conflict by any reasonable measure is trying to assert parity or somehow dominance over what comes next. And so that's just, I think, an indication of political warfare that the Revolutionary Guard has always excelled at and sort of begins negotiations with. And it's just part of the continued effort by the United States and a coalition of Gulf allies that need to degrade their ability to do this. But it's really going to be the actions that will speak louder than words or any agreement. We have to demonstrate that we will move with freedom of navigation and that the countries in the region are safe. It's a little bit like a missile defense situation where we defend against hundreds, sometimes thousands of missiles. If one gets through, there's a perceived weakness, and it does matter. But overwhelmingly, the trend lines are moving in the right direction and getting this right.
I spoke with the CEO and chairman of Chubb Insurance. He is leading a consortium of insurance companies that will ensure safe passage in the Strait. But he said it's volatile. He spoke with me on Sunday. Here's what he said. Watch.
The situation is volatile, Maria, as you know, and it's a bit uncertain. It's from day to day, hour to hour. But the U.S. military is providing vigilance and protection to ships that are transiting the Straits. It's important that that international waterway, which is important to the world, commerce, be open and transited by ships from all countries. And so we're doing our part to provide protection and certainty in that regard. And by the way, the 1792, when we were created, it was really created for the purposes to begin with of ensuring marine shipping for the United States in our own trade at that time. And ironically, here we are on the 250th anniversary, providing that important protection for the ships that are transiting now.
So, Steve, I want to get your take on this new satellite imagery. It shows Beijing built a new replica of a U.S. Navy-guided missile destroyer in the deserts of western China. Analysts warn that China is expanding its network of mock American military equipment so that it can test anti-ship weapons, as Taiwan is now boosting its military readiness for a potential attack or move in from China, putting greater emphasis on the ability to respond quickly and rapidly shift into combat in a series of drills this week. Steve, what are your expectations here with regard to Taiwan and China? And what about China and mocking up these U.S. Navy ships?
Well, it's part of the political theater they've engaged in for a long time, and it shouldn't be sort of tossed aside. It is a form of signaling of intent on their part, but it's a little bit like a prize fighter putting the picture of an opponent on a punching bag that you can hit heavy, but it doesn't punch back. And so it is showing intent. It's showing that they're getting stronger and they're practicing, and it is making pretty clear that they don't consider us to be their friend or their partner. They're practicing the ability to kill American members of the military in a potential time of crisis that they would create. So I think there are some messages that should be sobering and clarifying for our military forces, but I think the War Department and others are really already on page with this. And the other part that China has seemingly missed the memo on is that there are allies to the north and south of Taiwan now that have been sufficiently provoked by Beijing's encroachment that they now have committed that any crisis in the Taiwan Strait would impinge upon their national security interests, and they may have to intervene. That is complicating for Beijing. That's reassuring to Taiwan. And Taiwan should be remembered as the fourth largest trading partner of the United States, the fifth most valuable stock market on the planet. So this isn't just about chips. There are other things, too. And it isn't just about the politics of the Chinese on both sides of the strait, as the 1972 communique alludes to.
Yeah, great analysis there, Steve. All right, we'll be watching all of that. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Pleasure. Thank you.
All right, Steve Yates joining us.